Sandy Munro is going to be here to tell us if the beginning of the end of gas cars has already started, when that big day is going to come, and do we really need the government help to get us there? All of this is coming up next. Welcome to E4 Electric. Don't forget to click on that subscribe button and the bell notification icon if you like seeing Sandy Munro on this channel, as he usually appears at least once a month, and of course for all of the exciting electric car news. As you probably know, President Biden has announced the executive order to try to get our electric car production and sales to about 50% by 2030, but states like California and other countries have much tougher goals in mind. And of course, Sandy has a very strong opinion about it. I can't wait to find out. But before that, a quick reminder that this video is brought to you by Flow. The Home X5 is a great durable home charger that allows you to schedule, monitor, and optimize your charging via a mobile app with 24/7 customer support. Get one using our exclusive $150 discount in the description of this video. And by NeoCharge, already have 2 electric cars but fighting over a single charger? Well, check out the dual car smart splitter that lets you plug in both into one outlet without spending a ton of money on panel upgrades. Get one using our exclusive $50 discount code in the description of this video. All right, Sandy, so welcome once again. And today we're going to talk not as much about engineering, but just about, well, not really politics, but what's happening with electrification. And I think you recently made a humble brag video about that. Listen, you have all the rights to, but California here and several other states and many countries are now essentially saying, listen, we're going to ban sales of new electric cars by 2030, 2035. You commended the Biden administration that's trying to get to, I think, 50% of, sales by 2030 in the US. And you've also mentioned that, we need to do this because we're already behind Europe and definitely China. So why 2030, and why do we need to move, in some people's eyes, this fast and some other people's eyes too slow?
Well, Biden said 2030, and that's what I said in 2019. In 2019, when I did my little round the world trip, I got basically... In Japan, they don't boo you when they don't like something. They go, and I heard the whole. There was a lot of people in that audience. There was like 500 or so in the room, and then they had another 500 downstairs watching big videos, and then another bunch sitting at the side. So I heard the whole couple of front row people sucking in air, which means they didn't buy into it when I said 2030. When I got to China, I think I told you I got preempted by Chairman Xi, who said, you know what, get moving. I want to get rid of a whole bunch of car companies, and I want you guys to be producing a lot of electric cars by 2030. And he at that juncture said, I don't know why we even have to have any gasoline cars by 2035. That caused a lot of people to suck air as well. And then and when I went up, I mean, to me, everybody's eyes were about that big diameter. They're thinking this is the end of the world. So that's what was happening there. And then when I got to Norway, they were standing up and applauding. I got a standing ovation when I said 2030. And the reason for that is because 70% of the people have already bought. They're already buying. 70% of the cars sold were already electric. And why is that? Well, they don't have any investment in gasoline products. They don't have any gasoline car companies there. So the closest one is Sweden, and Sweden is like about 50-50 as well. So for me, it was great. And then when I went to England, I went to visit our customer Bentley, and they wanted to talk about an electric Bentley. They said they've got to move with the future and stuff like that. The tragedy was, 2019 turned into the big disaster of 2020, and so I never went back. But Bentley now is saying, yeah, we're going to have our luxury vehicle will be out there in 2030. Everybody that's got a brain has been saying that for quite a while. The guys who have not been saying anything about that are the guys here in the U.S. they needed some encouragement. Now, before I get all kinds of hate mail, I'm going to tell you right now, I was one of those people who went into the voting booth and could not decide on a president. So I decided to vote for everybody else that I wanted to vote for. And the reason for that was because I just didn't see the right leadership. Now I see Biden making a step that I think is the right step for the country. Statesmen are few and far between nowadays, and so anytime somebody makes a move like that, I don't care whether they're Republican or Democrat or independent or I don't care about any of that stuff. All I care about is one thing. Are they doing what's right for this country? Because this is where I'm living, and like you, I chose this place. I didn't just happen to be born here. It's easy to be an American if you were born here. Making a decision to move from where you were to where you want to be, that's a big decision. So I'm pretty happy about what he did. I think it's the right thing for the country, and certainly it's the right thing for the planet. And I believe that it's going to be ultimately the right thing for me personally. From a business standpoint, this is the way we need to go, and we needed to do it like fast, and we needed to have a little encouragement from the government.
It isn't easy to be an American when you're born here, right? It's much harder when you win. But at the same time, you also know why you want to live here versus somewhere else. Okay, but people question this. Like, do we really need to have our governments, local and our federal governments, to drag us into electrification? Are the electric cars that bad that it has to be a mandate, or should we just maybe do a better job promoting them and telling people about them? Because the best way to get a person like an electric car is to let them drive one for 10 minutes. So where do you see the balance between government mandates on this, incentives, etc., and actually companies, whether startups, Tesla, Rivian, and so forth, or the bigger ones, Volkswagen and BMW, actually making cars, electric cars, that are just better than gas cars? Where's the balance?
So the government has to get involved, and the reason for that is because the agencies that do all the advertising for the big car companies are definitely not putting out ads to say, hey, come and buy an F-150 Lightning. Hey, why don't you buy a Mach-E? Hey, why don't you buy whatever? They are not saying that. What are they saying? Hey, buy one of our gas cars. Hey, you need to have an ICE vehicle. Hey, look at this charming lady. If you want to have a date that looks like this, you got to buy this car. Don't think about anything else. And quite frankly, what happens when you go to the movies? Do they have quiet running fast cars? I can beat any of those cars. Once we get that Model S, there's nothing on the planet that goes as fast as that thing. Are they going to make a movie with some I don't know, hot guy driving it, and no noise? Hell no. They want some that kind of stuff. That's what they. So if you don't go along, and if the government doesn't along and say, hey, you know what, we can't have these guys, the people in advertising, beating what's good for the country. And so consequently, they're taking, and I'm sure that this is a big deal, they're taking on not only the advertising companies, they're taking on the Harvard boys who have the MBAs and who want things in status quo because that's what they know and that's where they make all their money. This is a big deal. And then I believe that you're going to find that probably about 50% of the people who are working on ICE products right now, like transmissions, engines, differentials, those kinds of things, they're going to be very seriously unlucky. Okay, I don't know what they're going to do, but if I was, say, one of the bigger companies that makes things that go around in a circle, I'd be trying to figure out how I get into the battery business. Or did I say battery? I meant electric motors. So if it's going around in a circle, you need to be making electric motors. If you're looking at other aspects, injectors and things like that, I'd be thinking seriously about taking every penny that the company has and borrowing on top of that to get into the battery manufacturing world. And that's kind of like what I'd be doing, because I see those people that are going to be lagging behind. You're going to see companies going out of business left, right, and center within 3 years. I guarantee it. It's going to be a real bad afternoon for those people who haven't made a move to electrification. So that's kind of like what I see holding things back. And that's why the government has to get involved, because on its own, we get overwhelmed with propaganda about things that are, hey, wait a minute, just think about this. Okay, I just found out something. I was talking to David Welsh at Bloomberg, and he said, hey, did you see these numbers on, well, first off, he said, well, what do you think of all these fires that are happening with Bolt and Tesla and stuff like that? And I said, they're minor. It's like no big wow. How many fires are there? How many fires are there with ICE vehicles in a year? Well, I don't know. So he looked it up. And the number is staggering. It's like over 150,000 fires a year. And hundreds of people die in these fires. How come you don't hear about that? No, what do you hear about? Oh, hey, you know what? Do anything you can to kill electrification, right? Bad news wins. That's the kind of stuff that the government's looking at and saying, you know what, we got to do something about this, because the press is basically trying to keep electrification down. I think that David's going to write a pretty good article about this anomaly of a couple of cars catching on fire. And I think that he'll probably quell it. And I also think that he'll probably get a spanking by the rest of his press friends. I mean, the other press guys are going to say, what the hell did you do that for? You wrecked my story, or you made me look bad, or something like that. But David's a pretty good guy, so I think that his story will come out and it'll at least have some fact to it.
So correct me if I'm wrong, where you're going with this is that it's not just the right thing to do within the country. We have to do it because other countries, European countries and China are doing it. And if we don't do it, if we don't force our own sort of auto industry to follow, we will just be left behind, where we won't be able to export the cars that we make here. Is that where you're going with that? Just at least staying with the rest of the world?
Well, actually, we don't. The U.S. doesn't export many cars. The cars that we do export are usually high-end luxury vehicles or pickup trucks to some parts of the world. But export is not our big thing. Import is what I'm worried about. I lived through the Japanese invasion, and I remember, General Motors had like 50 or 60% market share for whole of North America. Ford had 25, Chrysler had 15 or so, something like that. And then there was a couple of dogs and cats from Mercedes or BMW or what have you. So the deal is that now we're going to see imports coming in from China. And if you thought the Japanese invasion was something, have a look at what's going to happen there. They're going to be bringing in their electric cars. What are the locals going to do about that? I mean, have they got something that's going to compete? Well, when I first looked at a Tesla Model 3, I couldn't believe how bad the gaps in the body build was. Now, I can't say that, because the gaps in the body build for every car, every Tesla vehicle that I've been looking at is perfect. It's just like everybody else. But the technology inside, everything under the skin, is like, who knows, 5 to 10 years advanced. If I look at what's coming in from China, the body builds are going to be perfect. I know, because I spent a lot of time there, and they were looking for what we had to sell in a way of how do you design, what kind of software should you use and stuff like that. So we sold them our software. We trained their people on how to design, lean design, our trademarked process. They were buying it up like crazy. Their engineers lapped it up like cats to cream. What did I get over here? Nothing. Nobody cared about that. Nobody was caring about what's going to happen down the road when electrification comes. Now, it's going to be just like when the Japanese showed up and their cars got fabulous, absolutely fabulous mileage, and nobody else's did. And then there was the oil embargo, which was double unlucky for the big three here, and their cars were left at the side of the road, unfortunately. I think that a lot of executives and board members should be fired. I would suggest handing out a lot of pink slips in a hurry if I was like had a controlling interest or whatever in one of these big companies, because they missed the target and they're paid to hit that target. I know exactly what you're supposed to do if you're on a board, and they missed it completely. So
obviously, we're in the same boat. The more electric cars, the better. The faster we get there, the better. And I think most of the viewers right now would not argue with that. Here's what my problem is, and I think here in California we have a classic example of that. So our governor also wants, I believe, all gas car sales to be banned by 2030, which again, all for it. The problem is that, I don't know if you've heard, but our utility grid, the electric utility grid, is awful, and it causes fires, yes, and it kills people, and it's expensive, and we're not doing anything about it. And we're also not advancing the solar adoption that fast either. So my problem with our governor is that I'm all for his 2030 deadline of everyone buys an electric car. My problem is that you also have to have a plan to make sure that the grid and the solar, self-generating solar energy for houses is there, which we're not even on average. We're trying not to burn people alive right now. That's where we're at. So without the plan on the either, upgrading the electric grid throughout the country, and definitely here in California, and adoption of the solar energy generation so people can charge their cars directly from solar, do you think this might become a problem once we realize that, that balance is no longer equal? There are way too many people want electricity for their cars, and we can't handle it as a country, as a grid.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about myself first. So number one, as you know, I just bought a house, and it's in the countryside. Yes, and I sold my condo, and I bought the house because of where it was located. I wanted some property around me, and I wanted to have it as not a condo because I needed to. I wanted something where I'd make my own electricity. So I am putting up 10 days of electric grid and 3 Tesla walls. That's for me. That means that I will be able to run my Cybertruck. I will be able to run my house. And if I wanted to be a nice guy, I could help out my neighbors. But my neighbors are also looking at solar. They're waiting to see what I get, and then they're going to go. And I think that you're going to see a lot of people moving toward self-sufficiency, if you like. I think that that's probably going to help the grid. In California, electricity in California have had some real nasty situations, okay? So forest fires, because I don't even know how that works, but anyways, forest fires, towers falling down, that happened near my cousin's place. How in the world do you, it doesn't rain that much. How in the world do these things suddenly rot and fall down? I just don't get it. I don't
Sandy,
know how
sorry to interrupt, but I do have to mention that our biggest disaster was in Paradise, California here, where essentially PG&E ended up kind of causing this massive fire where people died, and we had this, this big thing in the middle of pandemic. So that actually was by far the worst thing that happened to us. So just wanted to,
So let me ask you a question. How did it happen? What caused it? Was it the wires just broke and fell down? What?
Oh, you mean technically? Because I don't know exactly technically how it happened, but I can tell you generally how it happened. When you run a company, electric company like PG&E for profit, they care very little about, upkeep, right? It's not their main thing. It's usually the government thing. And as soon as you hand it over to a for-profit company, they neglect that, and they realize that, hey, we still make more profits if we burn a couple of cities and pay whatever settlements than the ridiculous amount of money that we make. People pay $500-600 a month here in electric bills. Not me. I'm here in Sacramento. We have our own thing, but that's how it happens. But technically, we probably may not even know, but negligence.
Negligence. Wow. I guess I had a friend in British Columbia that, California used to buy electricity from Canada. It's cheap because it's hydroelectricity and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, one of the governors said, wow, we're not going to do that. Screw you. We're going to make our own. And they didn't really realize that there isn't a crank that you can turn. And so they cut Canada off, or cut British Columbia off. And not only that, they pissed them off so bad that they wouldn't work with them again. That's a real problem. The second thing is, the only way that you're going to get clean energy for something the size of California, because California has a bigger population than the whole of Canada, really, and demand in California is much higher than it is in most other states because of air conditioning and things like that. The only way that you're going to see this happening is unless there's a massive amount of people that decide to buy their own solar. The only other way is nuclear. There's no other way. You have no other choice, none. So, and I know that France is 98% nuclear right now, but I know that they're going to be pumping more nuclear power plants up because Germany has, they have a couple of windmills or they've got a lot of windmills and they've got some solar, but they can't keep up with the demand for electricity. And Great Britain, they just brought up one of their nuclear power plants, and they've got 2 or 3 more that are in process. I know that people say, oh my gosh, 3 Mile Island, or oh my gosh, it could be, you know what? Those plants were put up in the dark ages. They went up in the 40s or the 50s, maybe the 60s, and then all of a sudden everything stopped. Nuclear is vastly different now. I mean, I think that people have got to start looking or thinking, there's a good word, thinking about what are we going to do with the grid. And when you think about it and you put down all your options, solar is definitely a good option. Wind is an okay option. But nuclear, I mean, I don't get emotional about anything. I just look at the data and let the data drive me. And hey, you know what? We have, and that's the other thing. Thorium is used now instead of uranium. People still use uranium, but thorium can be used as well. And molten salt reactors don't have to be in situations where they're sitting on top of a powder keg like in Japan. I mean, you have to think about where you plop these things. And quite frankly, if anything goes wrong, a rod drops and boom, it turns itself off. Everything's quiet.
And the waste,
it takes a long...
sorry to interrupt. The waste is tiny. It's a bucket a year from each plant, from what I've heard. Right. It's nothing.
It's virtually nothing. And people are always... Again, we go back to what do we listen to? Well, if you're listening to some talk show host yakking on about stuff he knows zip about, or she, and they say, oh, they're going to, I heard one time, oh, they're gonna fill up all the coal mines in Kentucky. Well, first off, they're open pit mines. They don't, but here's the deal. People just pull this stuff out of their ass and they say, oh yeah, that's gonna happen. Oh my gosh. And then they run around like a bunch of chickens with no heads and kill everything that's good. They don't look at that. They only look at what they heard on TV. Well, guess what? Do your own research. Go and have a look at what's sitting out there that's happening right now in the rest of the world. It's not the same stuff that's happening here in the U.S. But I think the grid can be fixed. And if whomever the guys are that are basically killing killing people and burning up cities or towns. I mean, there's got to be real legislation. I don't want to sue them. I want to have those guys put in jail.
They're not.
If the executives...
They're not in jail for any of this. That's the problem. None of them.
Well, then there's something wrong with the governor. Get a new governor.
We're trying to.
What do they call it? So, hanging governor. Yeah.
We're
one
trying
of those governors
to. There's in the middle of a recall right now. But and by the way, I think you're asking. I think you, Sandy. I think you're going too far when you're asking Americans to peel off of their television sets and do their own research. Come on now. Like, I think you're being unreasonable here. Okay, I know. You're
probably right. Now that I think about it, maybe you could cut that part out.
Yeah, okay. We'll cut it out. Yeah, okay. All right. Well, listen. We've started with you know, our government. We ended with the nuclear plants. I think we've covered everything here.
Well, actually, you know what? We've had the good and bad of government. So Biden did a good job, and whoever the governor is, not so much. By the way, I met the governor I met the governor of Oregon. Man, if she decides that she wants to move to California, hire her, bring her down. She seems to be red hot on EVs, and I think she's got a brain. I would suggest that maybe you might want to entice her to coming down to California.
We need some brains, that's for sure. All right, well, listen, thank you to your brain for sharing more information with us. And as always, I will see you here in the next few weeks.
Absolutely. Have a great week.
You too. As always, don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss Sandy's future appearances here. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to his YouTube channel, which I linked to in the description of this video. All right. Looking forward to all of your comments. Other than that, see you guys next time. And remember to stay charged.